Man, does it feel good to be back. I love this beat, man, by the way. I'm going to drop a poll in the live chat when this premieres. So let me know what you guys think about it. Is this the best beat yet? Is this the one? Or should we go back to the one we used for the first 7 episodes? Regardless, welcome in. It's Thursday, November 10th. It feels amazing to be back. I took my first ever rest day, or at least in a long time today from the gym. I slept in and no classes, obviously. So I'm feeling rejuvenized. Great start to my day. Feels amazing. Hopefully, everybody's day, everyone that's listening, you guys' day has been great so far. But on tap today, we have Week 10 coverage, our picks of the week, our Week 10 waivers and potential trade targets. Maybe we won't dabble too much into that today, the trade targets, but for future episodes, count on that. But this is your early reminder to drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Your guys' support has been off the charts so far in the life of this channel. I really can't thank you guys enough. But without further ado, welcome to the Anomaly Podcast. I'm your host, Owen Stiftar. Let's dive into Thursday night. All right, this Thursday, which is today, we have the 4-5 Atlanta Falcons going in to Carolina to play the 2-7 Carolina Panthers. These teams just played in a 37-34 thriller in Week 8. If you guys remember that, the Hail Mary at the end of the game, and then there's the penalty when DJ Moore took his helmet off on that Hail Mary. That caused the kicker to miss the extra point. We all know how it went in overtime. But Atlanta's coming off of a close loss at home to the Chargers last week. They're still struggling to throw the ball, and effectively at that. I mean, it's a good thing for them if they have double-digit pass attempts, not completions, but attempts in a game. But regardless, Cordero Patterson made his long-awaited return last week, and he looked great. He had 2 touchdowns, really carried that offense in a close loss, but he carried them nonetheless. The home team, Carolina Panthers, they're coming off of an embarrassing performance last week on the road at Cincy. At halftime, the starting quarterback for the Panthers was PJ Walker, and his halftime stats were 3 completions for 9 yards and 2 picks. He almost had the same amount of interceptions as completions in the first half of that game. That might tell you all you need to know. But Baker stepped in after the half, and he looked better, which wasn't really hard to do, saying what PJ Walker did in the first half. But the Panthers still need to figure out who their starting quarterback is going to be going forward. I'm expecting Baker to retake that job, probably for the remainder of the season, unless Sam Darnold gets into the mix. But hopefully Baker starts this week. One, because I think I still have a little bit of sympathy in my heart for Baker Mayfield, right? I still want to see him succeed, even though he's not a Brown. But it also leads to a Heisman matchup. Obviously Marcus Mariota and Baker Mayfield both won the Heisman. So, the small things, right? It's the small things. I could very well see this matchup coming down to the wire on a Thursday night. These games usually aren't too high scoring, but give me Atlanta in a close one. Next up, we're going to have our first ever game in Germany. We have Germany and football, people. Uh, Football in Germany, yeah, yeah. But this is the first time ever that we're going to have a game, not overseas, but in Germany. And we'll be witnessing history on Sunday morning, nonetheless. We'll start with Seattle. They technically come in as the road team, riding a 4-game winning streak behind Geno Smith and the emergence of Kenneth Walker. Safe to say that they're red hot, since Geno Smith took over. But the technical home team is the 4-5 Tampa Bay Bucks. They're coming off of a potential season-changing victory in my eyes last week against the Rams. As if he didn't have enough records already, Tom Brady now has the most fourth quarter comebacks of all time. Last week he passed Peyton Manning to take first place in that category. So, as if he didn't have enough records already, he has another one. Tampa's defense, on the other hand, they looked of old last week. I believe their defense can slow down the Seattle offense enough. Keyword not enough, not shut down, but slow down to get a huge win here. I believe also it's the first game in Germany in NFL history. Tom Brady's going to come out with the win. Give me Tom Brady and the Bucks. They're going to start to turn their season around and get on their high horse. That's going to do it. Give me Tampa. Next up, we're going to have the 2-6 Lions going into Soldier Field to take on the 3-6 Bears. NFC North matchup here. The Detroit Lions, they're coming off of a much-needed divisional win last week against the Packers. They were 1-6. It wasn't a pretty win, but it was a win nonetheless. I expect DeAndre Swift for them to get more involved this week, much like he was early in the season. Obviously, he's been dealing with some injuries, but look for him to get more involved. Unfortunately for the Lions, is they do rank 31st in the league against the run, which is far from a good sign when you're playing a team like the Bears, who ranks number 1 in the league. But we'll switch to them now. It's safe to say last week that Justin Fields had his breakthrough game. He had his breakthrough moment last week. The Bears have the league's top rushing offense, like I just mentioned. It's mostly because of Justin Fields. I believe they average like a little bit over 100 rushing yards a game. Excuse me. Justin Fields. That's why it sounded crazy to me. Justin Fields has averaged over 100 yards rushing per game the last 4 weeks. So he's been a big part of why they're the league's top rushing offense. Not to mention the Browns also had a bye week. But the Bears should win this game and take second place in the division. If they can protect the ball, I expect the offense to open up even more. The more Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney get to mesh in that wide receiver room, and obviously with Justin Fields. But next up, we're gonna have the 3-5 Browns at the 6-3 Miami Dolphins. This is another team that I talked about a lot on Tuesday's show. We're talking about the Browns. Uh, Again, go check that episode out if you missed it. It was the fan-led episode, first ever one of those, and we're also going to be doing that type of an episode probably once a month. So just be on the lookout for that. You really got to pay attention during the shows, right? But I believe it's a must win for the Browns, to put it shortly. I'm expecting this game to be probably the game of the day. I'm not going to say the game of the week, but the game of the day for sure. I'm expecting this to be a high scoring shootout. The Browns love to run the ball. Miami can't stop the run. Miami loves to throw the ball. And, well, the Browns don't really stop anything, right? So Miami's going to be able to do whatever they want. Logically, it would be smart to take the red hot, high powered offense, the team that is at home in the Miami Dolphins. But I'm a delusional Browns fan, just like most of us. Give me the Browns on the road. We're going to improve to 4-5 in a must win scenario. Next up, we're going to have the 3-5 Denver Broncos going into Tennessee to take on the 5-3 Tennessee Titans. For the Titans, Ryan Tannehill, he should be able to return for the Titans this week. The last 2 weeks, we could say that they were a good experience for the rookie Malik Willis, who is their hopeful next franchise guy. But Tannehill should provide a much-needed boost for this Tennessee offense against a tough Denver defense. And this Denver defense, we'll say, has been amazing this season. They've only allowed a team to score more than 21 points once this season. They're on the level of the Philadelphia Eagles and the New England Patriots defense, where they're dominant, to say the least. But Denver, they're coming off of a bye, and the last time they played in London, and they won that game. Much needed win for them. Give me Denver on the road. They're going to keep their momentum going and maybe compete for the AFC West. Next up, we're going to have, in many's eyes, the game of the week with the 7-1 Minnesota Vikings going into Buffalo to take on the 6-2 Buffalo Bills. We'll start with Minnesota here. They're coming off of an impressive win last week versus the Cardinals. TJ Hawkinson made his debut and looked great. it was also able to see. It was also funny. Um, it was also funny to see the viral video going around of the team celebrating on their team plane. I assume heading back to Minnesota with Kirk Cousins. He had all the teammates' chains on, and and everyone's just hyping him up. It was awesome to see. It's a good thing to see for a Minnesota fan. Uh, just to see that you have the team chemistry, the team cohesion, and everyone just loves to be on the team, right? But if you haven't seen it, I talked about this team a lot on last Tuesday's show. Yet again, there's another team. So go check that out. But I believe this week, for the Minnesota Vikings' sake, it'll tell us a lot about if they're real contenders. It'll tell us a lot about what this team's really, their real flaws are, and if we should take them seriously. But we're going to move on to the home team, the Buffalo Bills. They were humbled last week, to say the least, in a loss to the Jets. You can only assume they're going to come into this game peed off. Uh, but that should only mean that we get a refocused Josh Allen and Buffalo offense at home against the 7-1 Vikings, who rank 27th in the league in passing defense, which is the if you're unaware, that is the Bills' strength is to pass the ball. But this is also Stephon Diggs' first game against his former team in the Minnesota Vikings. Obviously, they traded him, at this point, 2 years ago. I want to say 2 years ago. But I believe he'll put on a show in front of his new home crowd in the Buffalo Bills. Buffalo bounces back convincingly at that. Next up, we're going to have a matchup of running backs. I'm just joking. But the 1-6-1 Houston Texans go into New York to take on the 6-2 New York Giants. Like I said, this is going to be a great individual matchup between running backs Saquon Barkley and Dameon Pierce. But I believe the worst defense will show in this matchup, that being the Texans, and their defense, or the lack of, will be the problem again on the road. I do, weirdly enough, expect this game to be relatively close for the first half, but Brian Daboll will have the Giants in a good position for the second half, and they're going to win. They're going to pull away in the second half with Saquon. And I mean, hey, if they're sitting at 7-2, the juices have to be flowing in New York. I mean, you have a 5-3 Jets team, you have a 6-2 Giants team. What if they win this game? They'll be 7-2. You have two teams that are in very good positions to both make the playoffs, which I don't remember the last time that happened. But next up, we're gonna have Jacksonville and Sunshine going into Kansas City to take on Pat Mahomes and the Chiefs. Jags currently sit at 3-6. They're a much improved team that's coming off of a much needed win against the Raiders last week. The biggest positive for me watching that game was how they were able to adjust in the second half. Obviously in the first half, he had Devontae Adams for the Raiders. He had 8 catches for 80 something yards, 2 touchdowns. In the second half, the Jags adjusted and they held Devontae Adams to 1 catch and 0 yards. So it's always good to see a team is able to adjust and adapt to the game live, right? But Trevor Lawrence will make a few splash plays in the first half of this game. I'm expecting. I'm looking for this team to keep it relatively close first half, but look for the Chiefs to overwhelm the Jags in the second half. And speaking of the Chiefs, they defeated Malik Willis and the Titans last week in overtime. It was funny because in that overtime game, Pat Mahomes had 68 passing attempts. You got to think his arm is tired, even though he played baseball and he's used to the extreme volume on his right arm. But he still had 68 passing attempts. I'm expecting this Chiefs team to run a lot in this matchup to preserve Mahomes and his arm and his health going forward. Give me the Chiefs at the home, no surprise, to improve to 7-2. Next up, we're gonna have Alvin Kamara and the Saints at 3-5 go into Pittsburgh to take on the 2-6 Pittsburgh Steelers. The Saints are coming off of a Monday night meltdown, to say the least, against the Ravens. New Orleans now has the worst turnover differential in the NFL, which was surprising to see with their defense. But after the Monday night loss, Andy Dalton, who was their starting quarterback and has been with Jameis Winston out, he now has the worst percentage. I'll restate this. He has the worst winning percentage in primetime games in the NFL history. With a minimum of 25 games, he is now 6-20 throughout his career. In primetime games, Andy Dalton has only won 23% of the games. And like I said, that ranks him dead last all time. It's unfortunate to see, but you got to win your games, man. For Pittsburgh, they're coming off of a bye week, and last time we seen him, Kenny Pickett has continued to show progress. For the sake of Najee Harris, he's had a down season. I mean, he's really struggling to see the holes. For Browns fans, he's playing much like Trent Richardson did when we drafted him, and he really couldn't read holes as a running back, which, whatever. But for the sake of Najee Harris and the talent that he is, I hope he can get the running game going this week against the Saints at home. And with TJ Watt's potential return, we know how big he is, arguably the second best defender in the NFL. The Steelers should be able to pull this one out, even though I don't want to say it. Give me the Steelers at home to take down the struggling Saints. Next up, we're going to have the 3-5-1 newly led Indianapolis Colts going into Las Vegas to take on the disastrous 2-6 Las Vegas Raiders. I do want to, before we move on, I do want to say there is background noise right now. If you can hear that, I apologize. Um, but we're gonna stick and move. We're gonna keep moving, right? But this game will be highlighted not by the players. Again, we're talking about the Colts and Raiders. This game will not be highlighted by the players, but by the coaches, in my opinion. Obviously, the Colts, they have a new coach. Their interim coach in Jeff Saturday will make his debut. And Josh McDaniels on the other side for the Raiders is already trying to get out of the hot seat that he is that he's safe to say he's on right now, being that they are 2-6. We talked about Indy and their recent changes a lot on Tuesday's show, but it's simple. They're a disastrous team. You know, they only averaged 9 points on the road this season, which they're on the road again. If Josh McDaniels and this Raiders team can't pull out this win at home against a team that only averages 9 points on the road, you might want to move off of McDaniels sooner rather than later. Next up, we're going to have the uh, 3-5 Arizona Cardinals going into Los Angeles to take on the 3-6 Los Angeles Rams. Obviously, both teams in this matchup have been rather disappointing this season. The loser of this matchup is likely out of the playoff mix, with it being a divisional game and just both teams having sub 500 records. They're most likely out of the playoff mix as a whole. For on the Rams side of things, their biggest thing this year is that they've struggled to score the ball. They rank 29th in the league in scoring offense, and they've only surpassed 24 points as an offense once this season. On the Cardinals side of things, they just can't stop anybody. So they've given up 30 plus points in 3 straight games. D Hop has looked great in his return, his last 3 weeks. But as of now, it looks like they'll have to drop probably 35 to 40 points to win this game against the Rams. Again, I hate to say it, then a lot of you guys have pointed it out for my, I don't want to say hatred for Cliff Kingsbury, but I will say my non-belief in Cliff Kingsbury as a head coach in the NFL. I just don't believe in him. Obviously Cliff Kingsbury is the coach of the Arizona Cardinals. I believe he's holding this team back, and now with Frank Reich being a head coach free agent, I wouldn't be surprised seeing a Frank Reich uh, takeover in Arizona at the end of the year. But regardless, to be safe, give me the home team that has Cooper Kupp, has Aaron Donald, and has Jalen Ramsey to bounce back in this week at home. Give me the Rams. Next up, we're going to have the 6-2 Dallas Cowboys going into Lambeau Field to take on the 3-6 Green Bay Packers. It's a now or next year moment for the Packers. They've simply not found their rhythm as a team as they're on a 5-game losing streak, losing most of those games to teams that probably shouldn't have, right? But good thing for them is they're expected to have Aaron Jones back from his ankle injury last week. The only thing is, I don't think it'll help much against a Micah Parsons led Cowboys defense. Not to mention, this is the first time that we've had Mike McCarthy, coach of the Dallas Cowboys, match up against Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, they were together for, I believe, 13 years in Green Bay. So, long history between the two. But for this matchup, we know Green Bay can't stop the run. I'm expecting a healthy dose of run from the Cowboys in this matchup. The Cowboys are coming off of a bye, and that means Dak's only going to get healthier than he has been all season. Dallas keeps rolling. Maybe this game attracts Odell Beckham to put that star on his helmet. They've been the biggest. They've tried the hardest. I'll put it that way to get Odell on their team. And Travis, I can't talk right now, but stick with me. If you're listening to this far in the podcast on Thursday, I have had a change of heart since Tuesday. I would go with Dak Prescott on the road at Green Bay. I'm having, I believe Green Bay will put up a fight in this game, and I believe Dallas, like I said on Tuesday, they're going to love to run the ball, and the run is only going to open up the play action. And with this being a must-win situation for the Green Bay Packers, they're going to play harder. Man, I have had a change of heart. I would start Dak Prescott over Aaron Rodgers or over Trevor Lawrence against the Chiefs. But last Sunday game, the Sunday night football game, we're gonna have the 5-3 Los Angeles Chargers going into San Fran to take on the 500 4-4 San Francisco 49ers. Let's start with the home team. Let's start with the home team and the San Francisco 49ers. They're coming off of a bye. They're expected to have Deebo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell return to the lineup, so that's always a positive. It's the first time we're going to be able to see Elijah Mitchell and CMC in the same backfield, so always fun nonetheless. CMC, we're talking Christian McCaffrey, if you're not familiar with the nickname. Christian McCaffrey, he should also be able to become more and more comfortable in this offense. I mean, this is his fourth week in the offense now. Expect a big game from him at home. But for the Chargers, they're 3-1 on the road this season. They're expected to have Keenan Allen back to a much a lackluster wide receiver room right now with all the injuries. But don't count on it. I mean, we've expected Keenan Allen to play for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and he's always scratched at the end of or right before the games. The Chargers, they have a tough stretch of games coming up to close out this calendar year, and I'm talking until January. I believe I believe coming off of the win last week, I believe they continue their momentum and go on a big stretch of wins here to close out the season or the calendar year. I'll put it that way. Give me Los Angeles in the upset on the road Sunday Night Football. Give me the Chargers. There is going to be a recap of my Sunday picks on the screen there. Obviously, to recap, I took Tampa over Seattle, Buffalo over Minnesota, Chicago at home over Detroit, Denver on the road at Tennessee, Kansas City at home against Jacksonville, Cleveland on the road at Miami, the Giants at home against Houston, Pittsburgh at home against New Orleans, and Las Vegas at home against the Colts. For the 4 o'clock games, I took Dallas on the road at Green Bay and the Rams at home against Arizona. To close out Sunday games, I took the Chargers over the Niners. Quick note here, we're flying time. This episode's going to be a lot quicker than the previous episodes have been, but that's only a good thing, right? But quick note here. 2 weeks ago for our picks of the week, we went 11-3, I believe, and last week we went 10-3. So we're killing it with the picks so far. I'm not saying to bet with me or bet on my picks. Please don't do that to yourself. But we're killing it nonetheless. Next up, we're gonna have our Monday night matchup. The 8-0 Philadelphia Eagles host the 4-5 Washington Commanders. We'll start with the road team in Washington. They're coming off of a loss to the 7-1 Minnesota Vikings, but the Commanders have won 3 of their last 4. Those 4 games being that Taylor Heineke has stepped in. The improved Washington defense and Terry McLaurin on the offensive side of things, they should be able to keep this game close throughout the first half, maybe even the first 3 quarters. But for the Eagles, Jalen Hurts gets another primetime game, no surprise. He's coming off of a Thursday night win against the Texans, so they've had plenty of time to rest for this matchup. Jalen will be up against an improved Washington defense. I expect this offense to explode in the second half of this game. Like I said, I expect it to be relatively close for the first 50 to 75% of the game. But once we hit that fourth quarter, I expect this offense to explode. You know, Jalen Hurts and throughout this entire game will probably find AJ Brown in the end zone twice. And Eagles stay undefeated. They're going to pull away in the fourth quarter. They're going to improve to 9-0. And I mean, their schedule, like I said on I believe it was Tuesday's show, they have the third easiest schedule left. So I'm not going to say they have a chance to go undefeated. Far from it. They teams like this always lose games they shouldn't, but they have a good chance. That's going to do it for our picks of the week. We're going to move on to our fantasy pickups of the week, and then we'll get you guys out of here. I mean, we're only 26 minutes into the podcast today, and we're almost done. But regardless, let's get into our fantasy pickups, and we'll get you guys out of here. All right, our fantasy pickups of the week. We're going to start with 2 tight ends. 2 tight ends, and we're going to start with Greg Dulcich. He's a tight end for Denver. He's now rostered in 55% of leagues, which, if you guys don't know, my cutoff is 50%. But I've mentioned this guy the last 2 weeks. We won't spend too much time on him, but hopefully you went out there the last 2 weeks and picked him up. If there's a reason he's still on your waiver wires, go pick him up. He has an extremely easy fantasy football playoff schedule, and he'll be just a great roster holder for the rest of the season. I mean, I'll put it this way. He was a healthy scratch, or he just didn't get any targets for the first 8 weeks of the season. The last 3 games that he's played, he averages 4 catches, 46 yards, and about a half a touchdown a game. So, I mean, right there, if you're playing any standard PPR league, that's about what, 8.6 points at least, including if he gets a touchdown, obviously that'll boost you up to 14, 15 points a week. So, Greg Dulcich, if he's still out there, go grab him. The other tight end I want to cover is only rostered in 15% of leagues, and that's Cade Otton, the tight end for Tampa Bay. Last week, he had 5 catches, 68 yards, and a touchdown. Even though Tom Brady this season hasn't looked like Tom Brady, he still has the second most passing yards in the NFL. There's plenty of volume to go around in this offense. And, I mean, at the end of the day, we all know Tom Brady loves his tight ends. Cade Otton, he's shown promise, and I believe he will continue to do so for the remainder of the season. Terrace Marshall is a receiver pickup this week for Carolina. He's only rostered in 17% of leagues. This is a pickup for deeper leagues. I believe if you're in a 12 or 14 team league, go out there and grab Terrace Marshall. I will say this one's tricky. Pickups this week are tricky because Terrace Marshall, last week, he didn't look great in the first half at all. But when Baker stepped in after halftime last week, he found Marshall for pretty much the whole time he was in. By the time Baker stepped in, Terrace Marshall had 6 targets, 3 catches, 53 yards, and a touchdown. So in the second half alone, just with Baker Mayfield, he had 8.3, 14.3 points in the second half of that week. So if Baker Mayfield is their quarterback, I believe if you're in desperate need with bye weeks and all that, Terrace Marshall might be a sneaky flex play in deeper leagues. But nonetheless, I mean, pick him up. Anything can happen over there in Carolina. I mean, we really don't know week in and week out. But other pickups that I wanted to highlight, Elijah Mitchell, I know He's rostered in more than 50% of leagues. I just wanted to throw his name out there. He's coming back off of his injury, and I don't want to wish injury on anybody. Please don't get that twisted. I hope CMC plays the entire year out, and he's amazing at that for the Niners. But Elijah Mitchell is the backup running back now, and CMC is not the most durable running back. We have a track record of that. So if anything were to happen to CMC, we know Elijah Mitchell, what he can do when he starts. Go out there and pick him up if he is available. Another guy is Jeff Wilson, Miami's backup running back. You couldn't tell last week. Last week, Miami used him pretty much as a starter. He has a lot of familiar. I can't say that word right now, and I'm not going to embarrass myself trying to try. But Jeff Wilson is the backup there, and he has a history with Mike McDaniel. I'll put it that way. So he knows the offense, even though it was only his first week. Mike McDaniel used to be in San Fran with Jeff Wilson, so he knows the offense, right? But Jeff Wilson, nonetheless, last week he killed it. He's rostered in more than 50% of leagues, though, so just like Elijah Mitchell, Raheem Mostert's not the most durable guy. If anything were to happen to Raheem Mostert or to Christian McCaffrey, these two running backs are great pickups, and they're going to get you over 10 points a week. The last one, this might be a little biased, but regardless, I mean, the clock is ticking, and time is winding down until these two guys return. One is Odell, and one is Deshaun Watson. These two guys are close to returning. Obviously, one's coming off of suspension in Deshaun Watson. The other one is coming off of an injury in Odell Beckham. But regardless, both of these guys, I believe, can help come fantasy playoff time. I believe Odell, when he gets picked up, I mean, whatever team he goes to, they're going to force feed him the ball. Otherwise, they'll catch media slack. And that's just right about playoff time for Odell Beckham and fantasy players. But Deshaun Watson, obviously, he's coming back to a Browns offense that, I mean, you know how explosive the Browns offense can be. Deshaun Watson, if he's still out there, this is the time to go pick him up. But that's going to do it. Let's get into the closing and get you guys out of here on this Thursday. Well, I guess at this point, afternoon. All right. That's going to do it for today's show. I will be back on Tuesday. I believe that is... Oh, man, I really should have this pulled up. I'm not prepared today. But the 15th. I will see you guys on the 15th, Tuesday of this month. But until then, if you're enjoying what you're listening to, this is your reminder to drop a like on the stream, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and turn on those post notifications so you know when we post, because Tuesdays, the time's always going to be a little bit different. You can expect these Thursday ones to come out around lunchtime every single week. But the support has been amazing so far. I seriously cannot thank you guys enough. You guys are going to get sick of me thanking you guys and showing my gratitude to all of you guys that are taking time out of your day to tune in to a smaller podcasting show. But good luck to everybody this weekend. Good luck to everybody's teams this weekend. Whether it's real life, your NFL, NBA, fantasy basketball, fantasy football teams. Good luck to all of them this weekend. I will see you guys on Tuesday, like I said, the 15th. Until then, peace, love, and hugs. I'm out. Enjoy your weekend.